It's Tuesday, March 3rd, 2009, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.normal.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Good day, Stashers, and welcome to the podcast. As I mentioned yesterday, I spent the day in Salem, Oregon at the State House in Hearing Room B, videotaping the testimony for Senate Bill 388. Now, this was a bill that was proposed by the Stormy Ray Cardholders Foundation, and that's one of the medical marijuana groups here in the state of Oregon, and Stormy Ray herself was one of the co-chief petitioners of the original Medical Marijuana Act. 4 other organizations work for medical marijuana patients in the state of Oregon, including Oregon NORML, Voter Power, Oregon Green Free, and MAMAs, which is Mothers Against Misuse and Abuse. And leaders and representatives from all 4 of those groups came down to testify against the Stormy Ray bill. So quite an interesting day in marijuana law reform politics. Coming up later on the stash, I've got some audio from that hearing. This is selected statements from Lieutenant Mike Bingaman from the Oregon State Police detailing law enforcement's problems with what they call, quote, significant abuse of the medical marijuana program in the state of Oregon. So stay tuned for that, and I'm going to present it without any of my comment. I'm sure you can think of things you'd like to say back to the fine officer. Also want to remind you that Dr. Mitch Earlywine, who's always our guest on Wednesdays for Cannabis Science, is still taking his survey on marijuana use and personality types. So check that out at the Stash blog. The survey takes about 15 minutes, and you could win a $250 Amazon.com gift certificate or one of 4 4-gigabyte iPod Nanos. So check that out at the Stash blog at stash.normal.org. Good news on the medical marijuana front as far as our government at work goes today. Iowa just dropped a medical marijuana bill, Senate File number 293. We're going to hunt down some of the advocates in Iowa to give us some information on that later in the week. Also, tomorrow there are some very important hearings, one in Rhode Island regarding dispensaries and a couple others in Illinois regarding medical marijuana. To talk about those on the Stash today, I'm going to have Dan Lynn from Illinois NORML and Jesse Stout from the Rhode Island Patients Advocacy Coalition to get you out to those hearings and make positive change for marijuana law reform in those 2 states. And for our daily Toker Tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, we feature some international music, some French music from OI Star. I'm probably mispronouncing that, which doesn't come off too good when your last name is French. Also, don't forget we're still taking donations for placing the ads from the NORML Pro Cannabis ad contest on television. We've been raising a lot of funds from your donations, and thank you so much for those. If you can possibly spare a little more, we can get those ads on more markets. So please give till it hurts. Also, big thanks to our cannabis correspondent, Mr. Spoff, who's been doing a stellar job front-paging some great stories on marijuana law reform on the Stash blog. If you're interested in contributing your writing to the Stash blog, send me an email at stash@normal.org, and maybe we can get you up there as well. I think it would be a great thing if we could get a cannabis correspondent in every state to give us the ground's eye view of what's happening with the growing truth about cannabis. We're headed into the madness of March with our government at work. There's lots of bills and lots of hearings that are happening, so make sure you keep up with them on our activist agenda calendar at stash.normal.org/agenda. And there's plenty for us to pay attention to, so let's get started. It's time for your Normal Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our Normal Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. This is Normal's weekly legislative roundup. Illinois. On Wednesday, March 4th, both chambers of the Illinois legislature will hold hearings to discuss the need to legalize the medical use of cannabis under state law. Members of the House Human Services Committee will hear testimony in favor of House Bill 2514 at 8 a.m. in the Stratton Building, Room D1. Later that afternoon, members of the Senate Public Health Committee are also scheduled to hear testimony in favor of Senate Bill 1381. You can contact your elected officials in support of these measures by visiting the activist alerts through the map at stash.normal.org. Maine. Members of the Joint Standing Committee on Criminal Justice and Public Safety heard testimony last week in favor of LD 250, which seeks to amend state law so that the possession of up to 4 ounces of marijuana would be classified as a civil violation. Predictably, local law enforcement are opposing this effort. That is why Maine legislators need to hear from you. Contact members of the legislature through our link at the Activist Alerts map at stash.normal.org. Texas. Anyone who follows the marijuana law reform issue knows that change in the Lone Star State is long overdue. That's why it is important that members of the Texas cannabis community get behind House Bill 902, which would reduce minor marijuana possession penalties to a fine-only offense. Over 60,000 Texans are arrested for pot possession violations annually. Half of these defendants are below 25 years of age. It makes no sense to saddle these young people with a criminal arrest record or to put them in jail. Tell your representatives to support HB 902 by visiting the activist alerts through the map at stash.normal.org and by becoming involved with Texas NORML at texasnormal.org. Rhode Island. This Wednesday, March 4th, both chambers of the legislature will hear testimony in favor of legislation to mandate the Department of Health to establish rules governing the licensing of nonprofit compassion centers, quote, to acquire, possess, cultivate, manufacture, deliver, transport, transfer, supply, or dispense marijuana or related supplies and educational materials to registered qualifying patients, end quote. To learn more about this effort or to attend these hearings, please visit our allies at the Rhode Island Patients Advocacy Coalition at ripatients.org. New Hampshire. Next Monday, March 9th, members of the House Health, Human Services, and Elderly Affairs Committee will hear testimony at 10 a.m. in favor of House Bill 648, which seeks to legalize the use of medical cannabis in New Hampshire. 2 years ago, the House narrowly rejected a similar bill, so it is vital that you contact your House members and urge them to support HB 648. You can write them by visiting the Activist Alerts map at stash.normal.org. And to learn about additional pending legislation in Alabama, California, Connecticut, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, New Jersey, Oregon, Tennessee, and Washington, again, visit the Legislative Action Alerts page through the map at stash.normal.org. Study links alcohol, cancer risk in women. Researcher Naomi Allen and her colleagues at the University of Oxford analyzed data from the Million Woman Study, which has been collecting health information from 1.28 million women between the ages of 50 to 64 since 1996. The researchers wanted to see whether the women's self-reported drinking habits were linked to the 68,775 cases of cancer that developed during the study. They found that drinking just one alcoholic drink per day increased the risk of breast, liver, and rectal cancer. For women who also smoked, drinking increased the risk of mouth and throat cancer as well. The type of alcohol didn't matter. Women who drank only wine increased their risk as much as women who drank other kinds of alcohol. Although it's not clear how alcohol increases cancer risk, Allen says, quote, "There is evidence that moderate alcohol intake at the levels studied here increase circulating levels of sex hormones, which are known to be associated with an increased risk of breast cancer." That's the take-home message. If you are regularly drinking even one drink per day, that's increasing your risk for cancer. End quote. Often when I debate prohibitionists, they'll say that we shouldn't legalize pot because why would we want to add another harmful substance to the menu of adult choices? That might be a salient point, if we hadn't already made the two most harmful substances legal, alcohol and tobacco. While no substance is harmless, marijuana smoking, compared to any other recreational drug, has got to be the least harmful choice for self and society. While women drinking that glass of wine are upping their cancer risk, scientists are discovering that marijuana has anti-cancer properties. Cannabinoids possess anti-cancer activity and may possibly represent a new class of anti-cancer drugs that retard cancer growth, inhibit angiogenesis, and the metastatic spreading of cancer cells. So concludes a comprehensive review published in the October 2005 issue of the scientific journal Mini Reviews in Medicinal Chemistry. Naples, Italy. Compounds in marijuana inhibit cancer cell growth in animals and in culture on a wide range of tumoral cell lines, including human breast carcinoma cells, human prostate carcinoma cells, and human colorectal carcinoma cells, according to preclinical trial data published in the Journal of Pharmacology and Experimental Therapeutics. Wellington, New Zealand. Smoking cannabis, even long-term, is not associated with an increased risk of developing cancers of the head or neck, according to the results of a case-control population-based study published in the March issue of the journal Otolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery. House bill expected on FDA control of tobacco. Landmark legislation to put tobacco under control of the Food and Drug Administration will surface in Congress tomorrow and may be passed along to the President early this year. The House Committee on Energy and Commerce is expected to vote on the legislation on Wednesday, Karen Lightfoot said Friday. The legislation would set up a new office in the FDA financed by industry fees to focus on tobacco. It would allow further restraints on sales and marketing to young people, including stronger warning labels with graphic depictions of smoking-related illnesses. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, right? FDA oversight has worked well for most of our food and drugs, barring small oopsies like peanut butter and Seroquel and Vioxx and, well, there's a bunch more, but we don't want to go too long on this. The problem, though, is with the hypocrisy shown by the FDA when you compare what they say about medical marijuana.
Marijuana has a high potential for abuse, has no currently accepted medical use in treatment in the United States, and has a lack of accepted safety for use under medical supervision. Furthermore, there is currently sound evidence that smoked marijuana is harmful.
Yet the FDA is willing to control tobacco, which actually has the characteristics of their quoted report and is a proven killer of more than 418,000 Americans every year, compared to 0 deaths from marijuana. The bill has language specifically allowing for, quote, further restraints on sales and marketing to young people, end quote. Isn't this exactly what we've been trying to say about legalizing our drug of choice?
Stupid Stoner Stories.
As a public service, NORML reminds you that smoking marijuana will not make one stupid. However, some stupid people do smoke marijuana. Don't be one of those stoners that make the rest of us look bad. Learn your lesson from today's
Stupid Stoner Story.
Man accused of stuffing cat into bong. Omaha, Nebraska.
A man who tried to cool out his hyper cat by stuffing her into a box-like homemade bong faces cruelty charges and catcalls from animal lovers. Lancaster County Sheriff's deputies responding to a domestic disturbance call Sunday allege they saw 20-year-old Asia Showmaker smoking marijuana through a piece of garden hose attached to a duct-taped plastic glass box in which the cat had been stuffed. Showmaker told deputies 6-month-old Shadow was hyper and he was trying to calm her down. The contraption she had been stuffed inside was 12 inches by 6 inches. Shadow was timid but in good condition Monday at the Capital Humane Society, Executive Director Bob Downey said. Showmaker was cited for misdemeanor animal cruelty and paid a $400 fine. He also faces drug charges. He did not immediately respond to phone messages left Monday seeking comment.
I don't know if cats have cannabinoid receptors or not. I don't know if marijuana is harmful to cats at all. What I do know is forcing your pet to get high is immature, cruel, and flat wrong. Hell, stuffing your cat into a 12x6 box is cruel to begin with. It's a 6-month-old cat. It's supposed to be hyper. The ironic thing is this guy is probably going to get in more trouble for the marijuana than for the animal cruelty.
Dear Mr. President, last November you were elected on a platform of change. You promised the country reform on the political system. Well, let me tell you what NORML.org and many other Americans want changed. Marijuana laws. It was estimated that America made its 20 millionth arrest for marijuana possession this year. You want a real economic problem? How about the amount of money being spent on simple possession arrests? Incarcerating people costs taxpayers around $23,000 per year, and NORML estimates that up to $10 billion a year are spent on enforcement for mostly nonviolent offenders. Now let's imagine what would happen if marijuana was legal. Not only would we save billions each year on enforcement, but imagine the economic boost. You would produce jobs growing, selling, and tax dollars coming in from the regulation of marijuana. I'm not saying let people loose to sell on the streets. Put government regulation in to tax and control its sales like alcohol. Street dealers are the problem, not a guy with a gram in his pocket. Put in harsh punishments for people who drive under the influence, and stop punishing people who enjoy marijuana safely in their home. Mr. President, if you really want change, legalize marijuana.
Tuesday is our look at your government at work here at the Audio Stash. While the inevitable re-legalization of cannabis hemp will have to happen at the federal level, the steps leading to that destination take place at the state and municipal levels. We focus in on the initiatives, bills, and amendments regarding cannabis across all 50 states, and what activists like you are doing to enact a positive reform to our cruel and outdated marijuana laws. If you're working hard to make an impact in your city and state, please email us at stash@norml.org and let's share your local efforts with the worldwide cannabis community. Together, we can affect our government at work.
Pollution rises high into the sky. How can we still deny the truth?
Time for more of our government at work, and we're going to take a look back at the state of Illinois. And joining us from Illinois NORML is Dan Lynn. And Dan, welcome back.
Thank you, Russ. It's always a pleasure to be on the show.
We are trying to get medical marijuana passed in the state of Illinois. There are two bills there currently, House Bill 2514 and Senate Bill 1381. Can you give us just kind of a quick thumbnail sketch of how this medical marijuana bill would work if it passes?
It would work very similar to ones that are in place in Oregon and Washington State. It would allow for patients and their caregivers to grow up to 7 plants and possess up to 2 ounces of cannabis. and it would also allow for medical marijuana organizations to exist to serve as dispensaries for medicine to the patients.
Oh, wow. That even goes beyond what we have in Oregon as far as getting the medicine to the patients. So there's an important hearing on these bills. Give our listeners a little bit of help on how they can help you, and if they want to attend those hearings, where and when.
Both of those hearings will take place tomorrow, Wednesday, March 3rd, in Springfield, Illinois, at the Capitol building. The hearing for the House bill will be at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the hearing for the Senate bill is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. People can help out by contacting their elected officials down in Springfield and urging them to vote yes on both of those bills. It is important for people to call their state representative, their state senator, and the governor, and tell each and every one of them to vote yes and sign these bills into law.
How does the political climate look in Illinois right now as far as passing these bills?
Well, we've been working on this issue and trying to protect these patients for a number of years, and I think that this year we have a very good, realistic shot of getting this legislation through, because we've had a former sponsor of this legislation take over as the Senate president, and we have bipartisan support in the House of Representatives with a Republican and a Democrat sponsoring that legislation. And with our new governor, Pat Quinn, in the governor's mansion, I think that he would be more than willing to sign this legislation if it came to his desk. So I think our chances are as good as we can possibly ask for right now.
Excellent. Now, are you facing any organized opposition at this point?
We have faced organized opposition from the law enforcement community as well as the Partnership for a Drug-Free America community. However, with our Senate bill this year, we have a former state's attorney prosecutor introducing the legislation and pushing it for us to hopefully be able to address some of the concerns that law enforcement has so that they won't actively be lobbying against us this year. And I think that because we do have law enforcement on our side this year, that will kind of calm some of their effects so that they don't have to be so negative when we're trying to help out sick people here.
Do the recent political turmoil that we've read about in the newspapers regarding the state of Illinois and the governor's mansion and everything, is that having any effect on getting this bill shepherded through the legislature?
Yes, it does. Before, when we had Governor Blagojevich in office, there was so much tension and just personal problems amongst the legislators down there at the Capitol that it was almost like a log jam to try and get anything productive done. And we just really kind of removed the one bad piece and that was blocking it, which was the governor. Now we're hopefully going to be back to doing the business that the people of Illinois have elected those officials to take care of.
On the looking toward the long term here, if people want to get involved with you and your organization, Illinois NORML, tell them how they can contact you.
The best way would be to go online at the website, www.illinoisnormal.com. If people are not familiar with the Internet, then they can call my cell phone, which is 847-341-0591, and I would be more than willing and happy to talk to them about how they can get involved and help this cause.
Excellent. Now, how about the media in Illinois? Have there been much reporting in the newspapers, TV, or radio regarding this act?
There have been a few interviews that I've done for the print press. I've done radio interviews for previous medical cannabis legislation in Illinois. I just haven't scheduled those radio interviews yet, but I do anticipate doing so in the next month or so. And television has occasionally touched up on this issue with us. As recently as 2 weeks ago, we were offered to do a televised live debate on Telemundo, and we were able to find a Spanish-speaking volunteer within our organization who was able to go on there and do a live debate about marijuana legalization on Telemundo.
Oh, that is so great to reach out to the Hispanic community like that with the Spanish language debate. You know, you and I both know how much more this drug war and especially this marijuana war affects people of color, and so I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, and we were very happy that it actually went through because it kind of came upon us last minute. They were looking for a fluent Spanish speaker who would be willing to support our side on this. And, we sent out the announcement seeing if we had anyone amongst our ranks who would be interested and willing to do it. And sure enough, somebody came forward and stood up and took that flag for us. And we're very happy with the results of that debate.
Yeah, that's fantastic. When you get your interviews scheduled and if you find video for this Telemundo appearance or any other appearances, let us know here at the Stash. We'll get it posted here for our listeners. Okay, Dan?
Will do.
Now we're going to go to the East Coast and take a look at one of the existing medical marijuana states, the state of Rhode Island. And again, when you get these bills passed, it doesn't mean that the battle is over. There's still lots of things that you have to work out in these laws. And one of the groups that's trying to do that is the Rhode Island Patients Advocacy Coalition, and Jesse Stout joins us from there. Thanks, Jesse, for joining us here on the show.
Hi, Russ. Thanks for having me.
Important news that we got to get out to the listeners out there is that you've got some bills that would deal with compassion centers. And tell people what that means by a compassion center.
Well, currently in Rhode Island, patients are basically on their own for supplying their medical marijuana, and that's been a huge problem for people who have to go to drug dealers to buy their medicine. So instead, this bill would allow the State Department of Health to license a nonprofit compassion center, an independent organization that would grow and distribute medical marijuana for patients.
Okay. A lot of people are going to hear that, and they're going to think dispensaries. Is there a difference between what Californians doing with dispensaries and what Rhode Island would do with these bills?
It's the same idea, but a different way of going about it. The idea would still be a place that's allowed to supply patients with their medicine, but instead we'd have state-level regulations with requirements such as it must be a nonprofit organization.
Oh, okay. So the bills are H5359, that's on the House side, and the Senate bill S0185 on the Senate side. These are both in hearings tomorrow?
That's right. Tomorrow, March 4th at 4 o'clock, House and Senate committees will hear these bills.
Oh, so are they hearing them both at the same time?
Yeah, House Health, Education, Welfare will hear our House bill, and Senate Health and Human Services will hear the identical Senate version.
Any suggestions on if a person has to choose? Obviously, they have to choose one of them to hear. Should they just pick one at random?
Well, they'll both be scheduled for 4 o'clock, but we imagine that one of them will probably start even later than the other. So if you show up to one, chances are you still have a chance to get to both.
Oh, great. Okay, so just show up to the one that starts first and then get to the other one after it starts, I suppose.
Yeah, we'll try and start the afternoon in room 212 in the Senate committee.
Okay. If people in Rhode Island or the surrounding area want to get involved with this and help out, how can they contact you?
We'd ask folks to use the contact form on our website, ripatients.org, to contact us and let us know their interest. We'll be happy to direct them to hearings like this as well as our monthly community meetings.
How does the political landscape look in the House and the Senate for getting these bills through? Do you think they'll make it out of committee? And if so, what next?
Things are looking just great. I would say our two major impediments from last year have both cleared up. Firstly, people were afraid to be the first ones to do this. Now that New Mexico has begun licensing nonprofit producers of medical marijuana, that should be fine. People were also afraid of federal opposition, but with last week's announcement from Attorney General Eric Holder that the federal government will no longer interfere with medical marijuana distribution, we should be golden.
What is the state of the Rhode Island program at this moment as far as how many patients are enrolled, and have there been any problems with the program since it began?
Things are going very smoothly right now. Over the first 3 years of the program's operation, about 230 Rhode Island physicians have recommended medical marijuana to just over 600 patients.
Oh, great. So it sounds like it's really working for the people that need it out there. And is there any organized opposition to these bills?
Well, Rhode Island's Republican Governor Donald Kachiri has been on record opposing medical marijuana from the beginning, saying that we're just out to give drugs to kids. And I think that everyone's taking him just as seriously as we did from day one.
I guess so. All right. Well, we want to get everyone out to those hearings. Again, this is on H5359 and S0185 at the State House in Providence. A particular room again?
We'll be at the State House on Smith Street starting in room 212.
Okay, room 212 tomorrow, 4 o'clock Eastern Time. Everyone in Rhode Island, please support this bill and help the patients in Rhode Island. Jesse Stout's with the Rhode Island Patients Advocacy Coalition. You can check them out on the web at ripatients.org. Thanks for joining us again, Jesse, and good luck with everything.
Thanks, Russ. See you at ripatients.org.
Hello, this is Webb Hubble. Life insurance is now available for responsible marijuana smokers. For years, responsible marijuana smokers have not been able to access affordable life insurance products. NORML uniquely supports cannabis consumers. 2 carriers have already agreed to offer all of their traditional life insurance products at all levels without excluding individuals who smoke marijuana responsibly. Help NORML and help yourself. If you've been declined for life insurance, are paying above market premiums, or simply want to know what now may be available in the way of insurance for marijuana smokers, contact me at info@mclaughlinonline.com or simply call me at 202-293-5566.
The battle to end adult marijuana prohibition can sometimes seem endlessly frustrating and impossible to overcome. One way we bond as a community and draw strength to continue is by rejuvenating our spirit through art and music. The Marijuana Music Awards exist to recognize those sonic artists in all genres of music who feature a ganja-friendly message to motivate and inspire all the cannabis community. Our daily Toker tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, feature the finest in blues, rock, jazz, hip-hop, rap, reggae, country, bluegrass, and dance music to enhance that 420 feeling and refresh all you stashers for another day on the front lines of the drug war. Enjoy this cut from MarijuanaMusicAwards.com and visit our blog at stash.normal.org to learn how you can vote for your favorites and enter your Toker tunes in the 2009 Marijuana Music Awards. It's Variety Tuesday, and today's Toker tune from the Global Marijuana Music Awards is And I Smoke by OI Star from France. This great rock group was born in 1992 out of the famous Marseille raga band Massilia Sound System. OI Star writes songs about popular themes of tolerance. Their music encourages people to take it easy and be in a good mood. The band have an infectious happiness, capturing their audience easily. Today's song, And I Smoke, comes from OI Star's high-energy CD, Va a Lourdes. In comic style, the song explains the beneficial effects of medical marijuana. Through the comedy is a serious message of ganja therapy. The band have recently released their 4th CD, Manifesta. Check out more about this dynamic group at myspace.com/OIStar, which is OAISTAR. We hope you enjoyed today's song, and registered stashers, you get the bonus of an MP3 download of this tune. It's And I Smoke by OI Star.
For the band of Pigs Band, first schizophrenia and smoke marijuana.
When I was young, my mother said to me, "Hey, Luke, you know, you are very young, young, young." I say, "Hey, mommy, I know I'm very young because you are my mommy and I am your son." Now I'm grown and I make what I want. I make love all the night and I sing all the day. Girls say to me, "Oh, Luke, so can you be so cool?" I smoke marijuana every day. And I smoke marijuana every day. And I smoke marijuana every day. It's good for cholera, c'est bon pour ce que tu as. And I smoke marijuana every day. Yesterday I went to the doctor and he said to me,
"You've got the cholera."
"What? The cholera?
Yes.
The fucking cholera? Oh, Luke, oh no!"
Yes, you've got the cholera.
Today in Marseille I went in another doctor and I said, "Hey doctor, I've got the cholera." He said, "Don't worry, Gary, I've got the solution. Smoke marijuana. And I smoke marijuana every day. And I smoke marijuana every day. It's good for cholera, c'est bon pour ce que tu as. And I smoke marijuana every day.
I have a dream, yes, I saw God, oh my God! And he said to me, Lux, you have to tell to the world that grass is good for all the problem. Jesus Christ! All good people smoke marijuana. You know, Buddha, Bob l'éponge, Rintintin, Titanic Captain smoke marijuana. Oh my God!
And I smoke marijuana every day. And I smoke marijuana every day. It's good for cholera, c'est bon pour ce que tu as. And I smoke marijuana every day. And I smoke marijuana every day. And I smoke marijuana every day. It's good for cholera, c'est bon pour ce que tu as. And I smoke marijuana every day.
I'm Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML. Have you heard about the new super pot that's supposedly 20 times more potent than your father's Woodstock weed? Don't believe the hype. Marijuana's THC potency has always varied, even in the 60s and 70s. And the drug czar's numbers are full of, well, exaggerations. While no intoxicant is harmless, cannabis is non-toxic and far safer than alcohol. No matter how much you smoke, of whatever potency, you cannot die of a marijuana overdose. Potency is irrelevant anyway. More potent pot just means you smoke less of it, meaning less harmful smoke in your lungs. This is a prime example of harm reduction in action. Besides, the government already allows the prescription of THC pills. Its commercial brand name is Marinol, and it's 100% potent. Meanwhile, the federal government won't allow dying people to use natural marijuana, no matter what the potency? Does this make sense to you? Learn the facts about pot. Visit NORML.org today.
The following is testimony on Senate Bill 388 at the Oregon State House from Lieutenant Mike Dingaman of the Oregon State Police, describing what he calls significant abuse of the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act. This testimony has been edited for length, but not for content.
Chair Morissette, members of the committee, as Katie said, I'm Mike Dingaman with the Oregon State Police, and unlike the other organizations that are represented here today, just wanted to go on the record as since I represent a state agency, the state police is neutral with regards to 388. These are the kind of the clear and overriding characterizations of the problems. And first of all, there's absolutely no program oversight other than just the registry card system that Health Department administers. There's extremely limited access to the records that the Health Department manages. And although we've always had abuse in the Act, what we are seeing now is what I would characterize as significant abuse. We believe that it's gotten to the point where it's above and beyond what is reasonable. And again, lastly, the thing that we're hearing continuously now, and law enforcement hears about it more and more, and then we hear it through other avenues, is that the victimization of the patient. So again, that was the core problems that were associated with what we've been seeing. If you look at the website from the Health Department from January of 2009, there were 21,500 patients, 10,400 caregivers, and 2,200 pending applications. And I'm told by the Health Department that you can add that number to the patient count, so you're roughly looking at about 23,000 plus patients. Since January 1st of 08, we've had 7,800 new patients that have come into the program, and that number, if you go back to January of 06 when 1085 was put into effect, the number of patients in the program has doubled. The other thing you look at from the website is that as of January, there were 2,847 attending physicians that have recommended the use of marijuana in Oregon. And you look at the definition of an attending physician, it means the person who has the primary responsibility for the care and treatment of the patient. So again, primary responsibility for the care and treatment of the patient. When we start breaking down that 2,847 recommendations, there's 10 physicians statewide that have recommended over 75% of those 23,000 recommendations. And if you break that down a little bit further, there's one physician in particular that has made over 7,500 recommendations, which equates to 35% of all the recommendations in the Act. So if you were to look at busting that out over a year period, if that particular physician was working 52 weeks a year, 5 days a week, never took a day off, and never took a holiday, that person would have to see 29 patients per day, one time a year. So just a little bit of review in terms of when we talk about with the possession limits. A patient, a caregiver can possess in combination no more than 6 plants, 18 seedlings or starts, or 24 ounces of usable marijuana. And when we talk about typical plants, at least what we see when we show up at these grow sites, typically anywhere from a half pound to a pound a plant. An indoor plant more in the half-pound range, or an outdoor plant more in the pound range. So its potential at the time of harvest, you could be looking at in that 4.5 to 7.5 pounds potential marijuana that would be available. Now we add in the person responsible for the grow site, and a person responsible for a grow site can grow for up to 4 more people. So you multiply that all out by 4. So that person could be in possession of 24 plants, 72 seedlings or starts, or up to 6 pounds of dry usable marijuana at any given time. And again, if we go back and look at those half-pound to 1-pound typical plant sizes, you could be looking at potentially about 18 to 30 pounds. This is an example of what we are beginning to see, particularly with the outdoor grows, of what we're beginning to see more and more of. This is a legal grow, and these are trees. These are plants that are pushing 8 feet tall, 6 feet wide, and we've got some red things there that we'll kind of put that in perspective for you because the overhead shot isn't revealing. But each of those plants there is capable of putting out multiple pounds of marijuana. And what you've been hearing today, or at least from what I heard earlier, is that patients aren't having access to marijuana. They're complaining that they aren't getting it. I think Stormy talked to you a little bit about the caregiver and the person responsible for the grow site abuse that was occurring, where they're only getting limited amounts of marijuana from that caregiver and grower, if at all, are putting out pounds and pounds and pounds. So the question, where is it all going? Sometimes these caregivers that are running around, they're using the ones that are, and we're not talking about the people in the program legitimately. Everything here is not talking about any of the patients that are in here and trying to comply with the law. This is all geared towards those that are using the act as cover for illicit activity. This patient may not be getting hardly any marijuana, if at any, or they're being even though it says may reimburse for costs associated with the grow site, that caregiver won't, or grower in some cases, will not pass any of that marijuana to that patient without some payment in return. Or this patient may not even have hardly any kind of relationship with that caregiver. So the caregiver's out peddling dope, and of course I'm going to show you a little bit of this, but we've got a lot of examples of this. And we happen to start an investigation where we're looking at someone on a grow during that period of time. We're going to get a negative hit, and we're going to be moving forward as though it's an illicit operation. If we get that negative hit, we're going to move forward as though it's an unlawful grow, and we're going to treat it just like we do anything else. And if we're executing a search warrant, we already know that these indoor grows and outdoor grows have been subjects of home invasions. There's been violence associated with them. These card holders are already going to be on a little bit of high alert. Bad things can happen when we execute search warrants. So you're putting both the card holder and law enforcement at risk when we shouldn't be at risk. And in a situation like this, there's probably lawsuits coming. The other thing is we are attracting criminals from out of state that are coming to Oregon and using, and these are drug dealers, professional drug dealers that are coming here to use the act. And we've got a couple examples of that. This is a person here that was picked up on He was a federal fugitive. He came here from Texas and had federal arrest warrants for him for drug trafficking methamphetamine. So he comes to Oregon and applies to Oregon, and he gets a card. He's picked up on the federal warrant, has 92 plants in possession, and he's legal in regards to the Oregon medical marijuana. And the reason he's legal is there's a provision from 1085 that makes it unlawful for an Oregon participant to be either a caregiver or a grower if they've been convicted of a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 A or B felony for manufacture or delivery. That doesn't apply to anybody outside the state of Oregon.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Does this bill address that?
Chair Morissette, Senator Anderson, not 388 does not address that in its current form. This next example is another example of an out-of-state person, and in this particular, that came here and had drug warrants from another state. It just happens to be Texas again. And this person was in violation, had 69 plants, 53 seedlings. And what this person had done is come to Oregon, got a false name under an Oregon ID card, and then submitted his application. This drug trafficker was using the OMMA as a front. And what he's holding in his right hand there is a wad of an undisclosed amount of currency. In October of 2006, he was found to be in possession of 12 pounds. Told police he was a patient and a caregiver, so he could legally possess 3 pounds, a pound and a half for each one of those cards. As the law was, as it is now, is we can only seize the excess, so we took the 9 pounds. He was left with the 3. While that case is continuing, he continues on with his drug dealing, and over the next 3 months, law enforcement is buying marijuana from him, which results in a search warrant. That's executed at his residence, where, again, he's in excess both in quantity of dry usable marijuana and the plants. And of course, this is a polydrug guy. We also ended up with some methamphetamine. This picture that you're looking at now is a picture that was seized when that search warrant was executed at his house. This next photo is another picture that was seized at his house, and this is his son watering the plants. The reason that we wanted to bring your attention to this, and I think there was a question earlier where this was being discussed, it's law enforcement's belief that it's not the legitimate people in this program that are the problem. They're doing their best. They're trying to comply with the law and the act to the best of their ability based on the information that they're given, and that if they're trying to be responsible, they're not going to expose their children to these grow sites and marijuana laying around, whereas the drug dealers, the people that are in there illicitly, are more apt to do that, like in this particular case. The other thing that law enforcement is beginning to deal with more with these grow sites is across the country we're having a lot more discussions about safety when we respond to them, process them, and take down these plants, because we're starting to have examples of law enforcement getting sick. We were talking about caregivers a little bit earlier in terms of there's no limitation in the current act as to how many patients can be assigned to a particular caregiver. So it's important to go back and look at what the act actually says about what the roles and responsibility of a caregiver is, and that is that you have significant responsibility for managing the well-being of a patient. Again, significant responsibility for managing the well-being of a patient. So we looked at this, and there's a person in the program that's a patient for himself. He's a grower for 3 others, and he's a caregiver for 26 patients. And I guess the question we have is, how is that possible? How can you possibly provide, be responsible for the significant responsibility for managing the well-being of a person and be growing all this marijuana and being a patient who has a debilitating condition yourself? 19% of all of our marijuana investigations, whether it's MCS or DCS crime, involve out-of-compliance card holders.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy, and web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with another one of our cannabis quotes, this one from the Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church study published in 1980, which concluded, quote, some participants had smoked at least 2 to 4 large cigarettes, each containing 1/4 to 1/2 ounce of cannabis, over 16 hours a day for periods of up to 50 years. The most impressive thing is the true paucity of neurological abnormalities. Heavy cannabis consumers suffered no apparent psychological or physical harm. End quote. And that's in answer to a question on our Fresh Stash about what exactly is heavy use. Well, I can't think of much heavier use than that. For those of you who want to get involved on the Stash blog at stash.normal.org, check out the register link on the right-hand side. You can register to become a part of the growing truth about cannabis and post your messages in real time in the Fresh Stash. Thanks for downloading the Stash. We'll be back tomorrow with more news and interviews on the most popular marijuana news blog and podcast in all of cyberspace. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.